actually very taken with this story. One, because it's interesting for any time for someone to go and think about what it is to be in community, you have to be alone. I'm trying to think about what that means. But let me be very lowbrow and ask you if you watched the Colbert Report. The other night, he has a segment called The Word. And his word 2 nights ago was ecumenis, taking off on ecumenical. And at the end he comes down to the conclusion, and he is pretending or playing the part as an ardent Roman Catholic, and he wants to take on Muslims, and he says, at the end of the day, let's just agree, the one thing we both know is that the other is absolutely wrong. How do you have a conversation then, if that is the conclusion?
Well, there's what I hope for, and there is something that's the case. I don't confuse both. But what I hope is that one step would be to ask oneself, and I mean everyone, to ask oneself, how do I know that the other person is wrong? I'm hoping that usually, that's an interesting analogy you made about going to the desert to think about community. You wonder why we come to the university to understand the larger world. And for some of us secluded for 4 years in a very unworldly environment. But in any case, there must be a parallel there, because when you know or believe the other person is wrong, or when you know and believe you're right, I think by making that move to ask, how do I know? How do I come to these beliefs? It creates, metaphorically, a seclusion, really, where you sort of buy time to, and as you see, the work I like to do through St. Augustine is really just think that idea of time and how thought, and when it's somehow essential to a claim to act or be, even before we act, rational. And I think there are ways we could think about institutions of society or historical institutions in relation to what are their dominant existential modes. Do they encourage or discourage impetus to act on beliefs, or examined or unexamined beliefs?
I'm just wondering, I have a question on relativism. If everything is relative, that means everything has some truth in it. And if everything has some truth in it, then wouldn't that make the statement about the Pope true, i.e. that there's wrongness out there? I don't know if I'm clear. So if everything is true, that means the truth that something else is wrong is also true.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying, are you saying that, let me see if I understand this, relativism claims the way you render it, everything has some truth in it. Okay. All right, I think maybe I didn't hear you well the first time, or I heard you well the first time, but I think you modified it there when you added some, has some truth in it. All right, I'm just trying to hear where you're coming from, right?
Right.
All right. So if relative, I'm trying to see which version of relativism you want to say everything is true, or everything has some truth in it, or everyone's point of view on a truth is valid. See, there are really many pockets here. So let me see which one we could choose or select from these three or more that are out there, and see how it might work. So that, did you say the Pope said, then therefore there must be big wrong out there? Like, yeah. I'm really trying to think about a relativism that says that there are no wrong things. Especially, I don't know about on the street, but since I mentioned the vernacular, and I take that seriously. But I think in the books I've read, and meaning people who really sit around and think about how they can justify relativism, I don't know any of them who says that there's no wrong. Because what I find they say is either two things. Either that you say this is wrong, but some guy here or some lady there looks at the same thing and say that's right. And then who do you agree with? Or they might say that it depends on how you look at it. It depends on your perspective. So you get perspectival relativism. And I don't know what permutation of one or several of those together would amount to there's no wrong. Because we pretty much say that all the time. So the question is, what relativism makes us think about is, for example, when you ask it, have you ever been wrong? When you say something is wrong. And you notice that most of the time we have. You know, you thought this way, and then you don't think that there were times people thought there were witches everywhere, and then the people are getting hung for it, and so on and so forth. There are times when people thought slavery was legal, at least, even if not good, and then other times we say it's no longer legal. So at some point is when you notice all those things in the world, but also in your own life, the things you knew as a kid, as an adolescent, and now, that's what makes people take relativism seriously. So I didn't hear what the Pope said. I don't know the context. If you inform me better, I might be able to see if I can answer your question.
Well, I was actually basing it on her question.
Yes.
So I'm not too sure of the context either, but I knew about the whole controversy about his earlier comments about Islam. So that's what I was kind of trying to type into.
Yeah, I think they go well, even if you watch the Pope's behavior, because when he was in that German village where he taught for many years and was talking to academics and friends, they read some text together, or he made them read some text together, and he quoted somebody. And then when he was in Italy in his villa in summer, he met with people and he said something that he says, this is how I meant what I said, you misinterpreted it. And I think now he's visiting Turkey. I think he's also saying things. When you put all those together, and I would be surprised if there are not interpretation going on, even if the Pope hasn't changed his mind. So you could still come out and say, you know, I was wrong, or you were wrong, or, but without being a relativist. Because relativism is really, when it, on one level, it just works as a method. It's something to do what Sandra had pointed out. What do you do when? So relativist is just one guy who says, oh sure, I can show you how to at least think about the situation. It's different from, say, subjectivism, which is to say, you know, the way I feel it, the way I see it, the way I think it, that's the truth. And it's absolutely so. That's a different philosophical position too. And I can see how any of these methods, correspondence theory, can provoke a conversation about what to do without just methodologically, without committing in a substantive way to the outcome of the process.
Yeah, I want to try and get your view a little more fully on how you're conceptualizing reason, and particularly the sort of, if you like, social practice of reason giving, which is, I think, what a lot of people seem to be concerned with. I take it partly because of the interest in pragmatism that you've got, the paper and the kind of affinity with the Pittsburgh school.